At 10:08 on a Tuesday morning in the Gulf of Oman, the Mark 45 5-inch gun on the bow of USS Carney was in 4 pieces. This requires some explanation. The Mark 45 Mod 4 5-inch gun is the primary surface engagement weapon on Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. It can fire 20 rounds per minute at surface targets out to approximately 24 nautical miles. It weighs approximately 23,000 kilograms. It is a piece of equipment that, in its assembled and operational state, is simultaneously impressive and reassuring to everyone aboard the ship whose job involves pointing it at things. At 10:08 on Tuesday morning, it was not in its assembled and operational state. It was in the maintenance configuration that the ship's gunner's mate division had been working toward since 6:30, when the scheduled monthly breech mechanism inspection had begun. The breech assembly, the feed system, the training mechanisms, all of them had been carefully disassembled, cleaned, inspected, and were now laid out on protective tarps on the forward deck with the organized precision of professionals who do this regularly and take it seriously. The Mark 45 would be operational again in approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes, according to the gunner's mate chief's morning estimate. The chief had done this inspection 47 times in his career and knew the timeline to within 15 minutes in either direction. The estimate was reliable. What the chief did not know at 10:08, when he was examining the breech mechanism's ejection system with the focused attention of someone finding something slightly more worn than expected, was that 11 nautical miles to the northeast, 3 IRGCN fast attack boats had just accelerated to 40 knots and were converging on a Liberian-flagged chemical tanker that had been transiting the Gulf of Oman on its standard passage toward the Strait of Hormuz. The petty officer on the Carney's AN/SPS-67 surface search radar had acquired all 3 fast attack contacts at 10:06, 2 minutes before the chief made his discovery about the ejection system. The contacts, speed, and formation had been noted immediately. 40 knots in a converging formation on a tanker track is not a commercial fishing configuration. The watch officer had been called. The tactical action officer had been called. The commanding officer had been called. The commanding officer had also been told in the same conversation that the Mark 45 was in scheduled maintenance and would not be operationally available for approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes. This is the kind of information that a commanding officer processes with a particular quality of attention. The attention of someone who is doing several calculations simultaneously and who is professionally obligated to complete all of them before saying anything. She said, __, quote, _0, __. This question and its answer is the story of the next 93 minutes. The IRGCN commander aboard the lead fast attack boat had been planning this operation since 6 o'clock that morning, when his shore coordination center had flagged the Liberian tanker's AIS track passing through the Gulf of Oman on a route that placed it within the IRGCN's operational reach during the mid-morning window. The plan was standard for IRGCN tanker interdiction operations. 3 fast attack boats in a bracketing approach, boarding team on the lead boat, radio demands to the tanker crew to stop and comply, footage for the evening news. Iran's legal framework for seizing tankers in the Gulf of Oman rests on assertions that the U.S. legal community finds dubious, and that the IRGCN operational planning staff finds entirely adequate for their purposes. The window of opportunity that the Shore Coordination Center had identified was real. The Carney, whose presence in the area was known from previous AIS track analysis, appeared from the Coordination Center's assessment to be maintaining a patrol position that placed it 11 nautical miles southwest of the tanker's track. 11 nautical miles is a meaningful distance when a boarding operation needs to be completed before a destroyer can intervene. The Shore Coordination Center had estimated that the Carney would require approximately 22 to 25 minutes to close to effective intervention range at maximum speed, and that a properly executed boarding could be established within that window. The Shore Coordination Center's estimate was technically correct. It did not account for the Mark 45 being in 4 pieces. From the IRGCN's perspective, there was no way to know about the Mark 45. Ship maintenance schedules are not published on AIS. The Carney, from 11 nautical miles on an IRGCN fast attack boat's commercial-grade radar, looked like a destroyer. A destroyer is a destroyer. The operational assumption was, destroyer at 11 nautical miles has full weapons capability, including a deck gun that can reach you at 24 nautical miles, and a weapon suite that makes 40-knot fast attack boats into a complicated problem very quickly. The IRGCN had taken an operational risk based on the distance. They did not know they had accidentally stumbled into a window where the most capable direct-fire weapon on the ship was currently organized on a tarpaulin on the forward deck. This is not a failure of IRGCN intelligence. It is a reminder that scheduled maintenance is genuinely random from the adversary's planning perspective, which means that sometimes the adversary's timing is accidentally better than they knew, and sometimes it is accidentally worse. This morning, it was accidentally better. The Carney's commanding officer was very aware of this. The question, "What else do we have?" had an answer that was, in context, reassuring without being entirely comfortable. The Carney's embarked MH-60R Seahawk was available. Both of them, in fact, the ship carried 2, and both were at a readiness state that allowed a rapid launch within 10 minutes of an order. The MH-60R carries the M197 Gatling gun system, the AGM-114 Hellfire missile, and the Mark 54 lightweight torpedo, which in this context was not relevant but rounds out the picture. It also carries the AN/APS-153 multi-mode radar and can close to visual range and establish a physical presence above the fast attack boats in a time frame that is considerably faster than the Carney herself can close 11 nautical miles at flank speed. The Mark 38 25mm chain gun on the Carney's bridge wing was operational. It had not been included in the morning's maintenance schedule. The Mark 38 is not a Mark 45. It fires 25mm rounds rather than 5-inch projectiles. Its range is approximately 3 nautical miles, and its primary utility is against small surface contacts at close range. Against fast attack boats at close range, it is entirely relevant. The distance problem remained. The Mark 38's range was 3 nautical miles, and the fast attack boats were 11 miles away and moving. The 2 Mark 46 30mm guns were also operational. Same caveat on range. The VLS cells containing the Harpoon anti-ship missiles were fully loaded. Using a Harpoon anti-ship missile against a 40-knot fast attack boat conducting a maritime interdiction operation against a civilian tanker involves a cost calculation that even the most aggressive rules of engagement interpretation would not immediately endorse, and the commanding officer was not at any point considering it. But the Harpoon was noted in the status report as available, because complete status reports include complete status. What the commanding officer had available for immediate intervention, pending closing, was 2 MH-60Rs. She ordered both airborne at 10:11. The first was in the air at 10:18, the second at 10:22. The Carney herself went to flank speed at 10:11, beginning the 11 nautical mile transit at 30 knots that would bring her to intervention range in approximately 21 minutes. The Shore Coordination Center had estimated 22 to 25 minutes. The Carney's flank speed transit would take 21. The 2-minute difference represents the gap between the Shore Coordination Center's speed estimate and the actual maximum speed of a freshly tasked Arleigh Burke running at flank speed with a commanding officer who has a specific reason to arrive quickly. The AN/SLQ-32 had been collecting the 3 fast attack boats since 10:06, when they first appeared on the surface search radar at acquisition range. By 10:11, when the commanding officer ordered the MH-60Rs airborne, the SLQ-32 had already characterized the navigation radar emission profiles of all 3 boats, had identified the command boat, the lead vessel, from its slightly different emission configuration, and had begun collecting the communications traffic between the 3 boats on the frequency they were using for formation coordination. The communications traffic was not encrypted. This will surprise nobody who has followed previous IRGCN fast attack operations in this series of encounters, but it remains true and remains useful. The boats were using Channel 16 for some communications and a working channel for formation coordination. The same communications architecture that the USS McFall's AN/SLQ-32 had documented in a previous Strait of Hormuz encounter. The pattern was consistent. The intelligence warfare officer noted it with the dry appreciation of someone encountering a familiar face. Quote, "To quote 3, the executive officer asked, appearing at the console. Quote 4, the intelligence warfare officer said. Quote 5, he paused. Quote 6. The first MH-60R had reached the fast attack boat's position at 10:31. The Seahawk approached from the southeast, establishing a hover position approximately 800 meters above the lead boat at an altitude that gave the crew clear visual confirmation of the boat's configuration, their heading toward the tanker, and the personnel visible on the lead boat's deck. The crew photographed everything systematically: the weapons configurations, the boat markings, the personnel on deck with the boarding equipment that was visible from 800 meters with the Seahawk's sensor package. The images were transmitted to the Carney and to Fifth Fleet via data link before the Seahawk had completed its first orbit. The tanker, which had received a radio challenge from the lead fast attack boat at 10:24, instructing its crew to stop engines and prepare to receive a boarding party, had been transmitting distress calls on Channel 16 since 10:26. The Carney's radio watch had been monitoring the tanker's transmissions throughout. The tanker's crew had not stopped engines. They were running at their maximum speed of 15 knots, which is not fast but is in the correct direction. At 10:33, 2 minutes after the first Seahawk arrived, the lead fast attack boat received a transmission from its Shore Coordination Center. The intelligence warfare officer, who had been collecting all communications throughout, logged the transmission and its content. The Shore Coordination Center was advising the formation that a U.S. Navy helicopter was present and that the Carney destroyer was closing at high speed from the southwest. The formation was advised to assess whether the operation could be completed before U.S. intervention reached the scene. The lead boat commander's response was transmitted on the formation coordination frequency 37 seconds later. The intelligence warfare officer logged it. He did not include the verbatim content in the unclassified section of his report. He noted in the summary, quote, 7:37 seconds. The IRGCN commander had taken 37 seconds to do the math on a Seahawk overhead, a destroyer at full speed 11 minutes away, and a boarding operation that requires the tanker to stop before it can be executed. The math was correct. The boarding would not happen. By 10:37, all 3 fast attack boats had turned northeast toward Iranian territorial waters. The Carney was still 6 nautical miles from the tanker. The Seahawk had maintained its observation position and was continuing to document the withdrawal. The SLQ-32 was continuing to collect. The second, MH-60R, took up a trail-in observation position on the withdrawing formation and followed it to the edge of Iranian territorial water at 10:52, at which point it turned back toward the Carney. Now, the Mark 45. Let us return to it, because it is the story's central irony. At 11:23, 1 hour and 15 minutes after the gunner's mate chief had begun his reassembly sequence, the Mark 45 was fully operational. The breech mechanism had been reassembled, the feed system reinstalled, the training system reconnected, and the gun had completed its post-maintenance function check with no discrepancies. The chief logged the completion. The gun returned to its normal watch status. At this point, the 3 fast attack boats were 46 nautical miles away and inside Iranian territorial waters. The Mark 45 could not be used even if it had been available at 10:08. The maintenance timing had been irrelevant to the outcome from the moment the MH-60Rs launched. The commanding officer was informed that the Mark 45 was operational at 11:24. She acknowledged the report. She then asked what the fuel state was on the 2 Seahawks. Both were recovering aboard at 11:30. The fuel states were adequate. She noted this and returned to the after-action documentation that was going to occupy her for the next several hours. The after-action paperwork is worth acknowledging with the humor it deserves. The Mark 45 maintenance status, the detail that made the encounter feel initially precarious, required its own documentation trail. The maintenance schedule had been properly authorized. The maintenance had been properly completed. The Mark 45 had been out of service for its planned duration and had returned to service within the estimated window. All of this was correct, and all of it needed to be documented in a way that explained why the ship's primary surface engagement weapon had been in 4 pieces at the moment of the encounter, without implying either that the maintenance was improperly timed, it was properly timed, or that the outcome had been dependent on it, it had not been. The gunner's mate chief, reading the draft documentation later that afternoon, noted that his inspection had found abnormal wear on the ejection system that would have required an emergency maintenance evolution within 2 weeks had it not been caught in the scheduled inspection. He added this to the maintenance record with the quiet satisfaction of someone whose methodical work had prevented a future problem entirely unconcerned with its tactical context. The intelligence package from the encounter was assembled by 14:30. The 3 fast attack boats' individual navigation radar profiles, the Shore Coordination Center's communications, including the 10:33 transmission advising the formation of the helicopter and the Carney's approach, the formation's internal coordination traffic, the boarding timeline that had been discussed on Channel 16, the lead boat commander's 37-second response and his assessment, the Seahawk imagery of the boats, the personnel, and the boarding equipment. It all went into a package that ran to 13 pages and was transmitted to 5th Fleet by 1500. The Shore Coordination Center's communications were flagged for signals intelligence follow-up. The boarding timeline discussion was flagged as primary source documentation of IRGCN maritime interdiction procedures, the kind of operational planning detail that is rarely collected with this completeness. The intelligence warfare officer submitted the package and noted in his cover summary that the encounter had produced, in addition to the tactical documentation, the most complete direct collection of IRGCN boarding operation planning communications that Pacific Fleet Intelligence had recorded in the current deployment. He wrote this without mentioning the Mark 45, because the Mark 45 was a maintenance record item and not an intelligence collection factor. The gun's absence had not contributed to the collection. The collection had happened because 3 fast attack boats had used Channel 16 to plan a boarding operation within collection range of an AN/SLQ-32. The Mark 45 was incidental. At approximately 1600 local time in Tehran, IRGCN Media released a brief statement confirming that IRGCN forces had conducted maritime law enforcement operations in the Gulf of Oman to protect Iran's sovereign maritime rights, that American military interference had prevented the completion of a legitimate enforcement action, and that IRGCN forces had withdrawn professionally and in accordance with operational protocol after successfully demonstrating their presence and capability in the area. The statement did not mention Channel 16. It did not mention the boarding timeline that had been discussed in detail on an unencrypted frequency before the Seahawk arrived. It did not mention the 37-second calculation by the lead boat commander, or his transmission advising withdrawal, both of which were now in the intelligence package at Fifth Fleet. It did not mention the 13 pages. It also did not mention the Mark 45. The IRGCN did not know about the Mark 45. They had operated on the assumption that a destroyer at 11 nautical miles had its full weapons capability available. They had not been wrong. They had been 11 nautical miles away and facing a Seahawk overhead and a closing destroyer and a tanker that would not stop, and the Mark 45 had been irrelevant to all of those facts. The gunner's mate chief went to dinner at 17:30. He ate with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had done a thorough inspection, found a problem before it became an emergency, and fixed it correctly. He did not know that his maintenance had coincided with an IRGCN fast attack operation. He was not told because it was not operationally relevant to his maintenance documentation. The ejection system had shown abnormal wear. He had found it. He had fixed it. The gun was operational. That was the whole story from his perspective. It was a complete story. It was also a much simpler story than the one the intelligence warfare officer had spent the day documenting. The tanker continued to its destination. Its crew filed a distress report with maritime authorities and noted that the vessels had withdrawn when a U.S. Navy helicopter arrived. They did not report that the U.S. Navy destroyer's main gun had been in maintenance when the incident began, because they did not know, because there is no reason a tanker crew would know the maintenance schedule of a destroyer 11 nautical miles away. The detail that could have made the morning genuinely alarming for the tanker crew, for the Carney's commanding officer, for the IRGCN, and for anyone writing about it afterward, was a detail that only the Carney's crew knew. The Mark 45 was operational before anyone needed it. The Seahawks had resolved the situation before the gun was relevant. The whole episode was, from the outside, another IRGCN fast attack operation that ran into a U.S. Navy helicopter and turned away. The 13 pages were the morning's most durable product. The Mark 45 was back in service at 11:23. The gunner's mate chief had done good work. Bye for now.